Sometimes you'll want a certain effect, but you only want it on a certain frequency, maybe on the highs, the mids. And on some devices, you'll actually have a multiband type thing where you can set up exactly what you want. Very common is multiband compression. Also, a lot of delay units, at least Ableton, have these little multiband, whatever that's supposed to mean, things. But you can actually use a rack to divide up your signal into multiple chains and then affect each one independently, and not just across different frequency ranges, but also across left and right channels, across mid and side, and really anything else if you can think of it. So let's head to the computer screen and get in.
Yes. Yes. I have a tiny sketch with some drums and a thing, and let's just listen to it for a second just to get an idea of what we're dealing with before we get into all the technical, dirty details. So there's that. Now, there is this chord thing, sounds like that. And I feel like maybe a bit of stereo image, just a tiny bit of distortion. I'm gonna do this first of all without any multiband whatever, and let's hear what that sounds like. Okay, so what I want to do is use audio effect, auto pan. That sounds about right. I also wanted a bit of distortion. What I'm going to do for that is saturator. Now here's where I start to get into a problem. Really, I just want to crunch up the highs a bit. Just add a bit of fizz on the top. But if I just put this on like this, it's going to sound like so. I don't want an electric guitar. That's not what I'm going for. Who needs guitars anyways? So to work around all this, instead of trying to figure out how to do this or getting an actual multiband saturator plugin, we don't need to do any of that. We don't need to spend money. Money is for quitters. Here's what we're going to do instead. I'm going to delete this and start fresh with the saturator. And drop in an audio effect rack. What we're basically going to do here is we're going to divide the signal up into different bands, the lows, the mids, the highs, whatever. And the best way I find to isolate individual bands is with the EQ3. I've used EQ8 before, but I just couldn't get it to sound right. I'll demonstrate why later. For now, let's look at the EQ3. Drop that in there. Now the EQ3 is 3 bands. That's why it's called EQ3. Now this device is really made for DJing use, so it kind of has a bit of color to it. For what we're doing here, we don't want that on. So I'm going to right click on the header. And because this is Live 9, there is this flat response command. If I click that, a check mark has appeared next to it. And that means I have no coloration to the sound, which makes it a lot easier for what I'm going to do here. Now, we're going to split this up across different bands. And there are 3 bands in the EQ3, which means we're going to need 3 chains to divide up the sound. Right click, create chain, right click, create chain, and before this gets confusing, I'm going to rename these. That's not the right button. So now, I want to put an EQ3 onto each of these. Hold down Control and drag it on. There we go. Now I have an EQ3 on each one. Now on the EQ3 device, we have these gain low, gain mid, gain high, our 3 bands essentially. And underneath these controls we have, these are essentially mute switches for each band. So now if I solo this one, and then I turn off mid and the high as such, we just get the lows left. Because it's a low channel, that's exactly what we want. Let's do that on the mid, turning off the low and the high, and on the high, turning off the low and the mid. Now each channel has its own thing. Cool. And the important thing is, and this was the problem I had with EQ8, if I turn this rack off, it should sound the same as when it's on. Let's listen and make sure it does. Sounds pretty much the same to me. So now we have this. What's the point of this? Why did I go through all this trouble? Well, remember this auto pan from earlier? Drop the auto pan onto the mid channel and listen to that. That's pretty good.
I like that.
Now I also wanted to have a little bit of crunch on the highs, and that, of course, now we can just drag the saturator back and put it onto the high channel. You know, I think it could use a redux as well. You know what, listening back to it, I think I actually preferred the auto pan on the full thing. What do you know? Okay, so now I like the sound of the highs, but I think it's just a little bit too loud. The great thing about this is now we have all these volume levels right here. So I can adjust these, turn up the lows there, turn down the highs. Now there's another thing we can still do with this.
To pick us another step.
On each of these EQ3s, there is a freak low and freak high. Are you a low freak? Are you a high freak? With these, we can basically set where the crossover points are between these bands. Essentially, if I solo the highs, by moving this down, I can bring in more lower frequencies into it. For this particular example, I think 2 kilohertz is probably the best place to put it. The problem is, these other channels, if I leave this at 2 kilohertz, these other channels are going to start to conflict because this one is still set to 2.5 kilohertz. So if I listen to it in full, it's going to sound like this. Compare that to what it was before. The way to avoid that is, again, just to set them all the same. But instead of going in and adjusting all these, I think the easier way to do this is to open up the macros, hit map, and then go to each one and do this. Click on the freak low, map, freak low, map, freak low, map. And then the same on the highs. Now, hit delete on them to reset them. And now it's easy to change these later. If you want, there's more things we could do here, but I'm not going to do them. Great, so now I have this great rack. If we just remove the saturator and bit crusher, anytime we need to split up our sound into multiple frequencies, we can. So let's do that. Instead of messing up what I put here, I'm going to just Control D. Now I have a second one, which I can do whatever I want to. Now these EQ3s kind of take up space. If you wanted to like drag and drop something, you can do it. It's just not very fun. To make it fun, I'm going to drop in an empty audio effects rack right here. And close this. Now it just says drop audio effects here. And you know exactly where to put them. It has words. So I'm going to put one of those on each of these. And close this. I'm also going to reset these to its defaults, so do that, just hit delete. Cool, and make it look pretty. I'm going to rename these to space, tab space, tab space, tab space, tab space, tab space. And I'm also going to disable them like this. Great, so all I got to do is hit save now. I'm going to save it as Multiband. And I'm going to do that underscore thing, so that it appears at the top. But you know, this isn't the only way we can split up our sound into different things we can process. Other popular ways to divide things is to do left and right processing. Also, mid and side processing is very popular as well. These are very easy to set up in a very similar fashion. Audio effects rack, chains. First we're going to do left and right, so we're going to need 2 for that. One is the left, and one is the right. And on the left channel, we're going to add in a utility. And on the right channel, we're going to do the same thing. Now on the utility device, there is this thing that says stereo. If we click that, you see left, right, stereo swap. This is the left channel. Let's click left. See what happens. Let's just listen to it. Now you might say, it doesn't sound like it's to the left. It's in the middle.
You silly goose.
And that's because it's not in the left. As you can see in this panorama knob, it's in the center. So let's put it at the left. That's other left. And now, the left channel is on the left, isn't it? Do the same thing on the right, or rather, the opposite thing. And it seems that whenever you do it like this, it does make things louder, but you can turn it down. I mean, is that really an issue? If you want to, you can do this. Open up the macros, hit map, gain, gain. Now we have a gain control. And we can turn it down that way. Right, so that's left and right. And mid and side is also uses the utility. And first of all, let's rename these, because that's going to get really confusing if I don't. And now, get rid of this left and put it back to stereo. And put it back into the middle. Now here we're going to play around with the width. Basically what this does is it adjusts the level between the mid and the side. If it's at 0, it's only the middle. And if it's at 200, it's only the sides. No, it actually does not make things sound wider, unfortunately. I wish it was that easy. Now, you might be wondering, what is mid? What is side? Why do I want it? Basically, to be mathematical, it's like, I think it's if you add the left and the right channels, it's what you get, and then the side is if you subtract them. But who wants to math? I mean, basically the mid is all the stuff that's in the middle, and the side is all the stuff that's at the sides. I can demonstrate exactly what that sounds like. That's normal. That's what's in the middle. Kind of chorusy, isn't it? And that's what's at the sides. So, let's get back to doing the important stuff. For this mid channel, we're going to set it to 0. And for the side channel, we're going to set it to 200. Ooh. Stereo and center. And then 200. And let's listen and see if there's a difference. Haha! Rejoice! You should probably save that. In fact, you should probably save the left-right one as well. But I'm not. I'm going to hit delete. And be done with it all.
So that's it for that technique. All 3 of the racks I just created should be available as down in the description. If you want to find out about more stuff you can do with racks, there should be a video here and here. And if there's not, then you can just subscribe, and I'm sure there'll be some in the future. And magic!